Hello and welcome back to the Concept Checkup. The point of Concept Checkup is to dive into the Warframe forums, look for a community-made Warframe concept, and talk about it. For the purpose of Concept Checkup, I will use my custom-built evaluating method known as AS. Without further ado, let's begin the checkup. For today's checkup we have Flora, the plant Warframe. Flora was created by Mr. Pigman on the Warframe forums, who created the previously covered Nebula Warframe. Flora is designed to be nothing more than a supportive Warframe, similar to Trinity, but with emphasis on buffing rather than straight-up healing or providing energy. Flora has above-average health, below-average shields, armor, and energy capacity, and an above-average sprint speed. Flora is most certainly a fragile Warframe, but given the ability to run the fuck away from danger at a faster rate than most other frames, she can potentially still avoid not being one-shot by everything. Flora has an unnamed passive. All enemies Flora kills during stealth or with a ground slam spawn a bush that lasts 30 seconds, cloaking all allies that enter it. If a bush spawns in this manner, Flora instantly gains 10 energy. The unit spawning passive comes across to me as similar to Hydroids, although it's a guaranteed spawn rather than a 50% chance. Regardless, while the energy payout seems reasonable, the 30-second stealth bush seems way too strong for just a passive. Even Loki requires at least 250% power duration to reach at least 30 seconds on his invisibility, and yet Flora gains a free Many-Var cloak arrow just for using a melee slam. Limiting the amount of bushes that can be active on the field or reducing the duration of each bush's cloak to 10 seconds maximum would be a decent way to trim down Flora, pun intended. Flora's first ability is Lignify. Target enemy becomes encased in a tree, dealing damage and knocking down enemies within a small radius, as well as taking a percentage of damage that nearby enemies take, in addition to serving as a part of the environment, essentially becoming bulletproof. Lignify for some strange reason sounds like an Atlas Tectonics that is actually useful. Lignify would provide singular target crowd control in addition to doubling as a minor AO damage and crowd control ability, all the while serving as cover for your team. If the numbers were higher than they currently are, I would without a doubt call Lignify an overloaded first ability, but in its current state, it sounds like a great power. A bit jam-packed, sure. But otherwise, Lignify's kind of okay. Flora's second ability is Garden. Flora spawns a plant with varying effects depending on what she does during Garden's duration. If Flora kills an enemy or assists with her primary or secondary, she spawns a plant that grants ammo regeneration. If Flora kills an enemy or assists with melee, she spawns a plant that grants more armor to Flora and her allies. If Flora bullet jumps, she spawns a plant that serves as a trip mine. Given how each plant's buffs stack and scale with power strength, it's possible for Flora to simply mow down a crowd of enemies during Garden's duration and benefit off the massive buffs granted by the plants spawned. Thankfully the ammo regeneration applied from Garden's plants goes only to the magazine of all active weapons, not the reserve, meaning that so long as reloading is not performed, the ammo reserve of a player is not drained. In a similar vein, the bonus armor granted from Garden's plans could potentially stack to ludicrous amounts, which would benefit frames like Valkyrie or Chroma, but since the buff's range forces players to stay within its area of effect in order to keep the buff active, the potentially retarded bonus armor that could be granted is balanced. To put it short, Flora gives her allies the ability to take a lot more damage than normal or the ability to never have an empty magazine, but only in a certain area. This encourages camping, and I'm sure that would make Flora a great Warframe to play on survival or defense, and significantly less so on exterminate or rescue. Flora's third ability is Synthesis, a toggle skill. Upon activation, all allies within the range of Synthesis gain percentage health regeneration, and plants within range have their timers stopped. Percentage health regeneration per second sounds great, especially given that in Flora's case it's affected by power strength. However, the added feature of Synthesis freezing the duration of all nearby plants just screams we're going to camp all day. Add to that the fact that Trinity's energy vampire build is extremely meta, and now you've created an absurdly OP symbiosis with two Warframes. Trinity provides energy so long as enemies are around, and Flora provides armor and ammo so long as she has energy. Even if Synthesis were made into a channeling ability like Mace's Peacemaker or Excalibur's Exalted Blade, that would do little to balance synthesis, because Flora's plants run on their own duration, meaning that even if synthesis is not active, Flora's plants are still active of their own accord, albeit with a ticking down duration. Tuning synthesis so it further buffs active plants rather than halting their duration seems like a fair trade. Removing the frozen duration for plants and replacing it with doubled potency for plants could be a viable solution. Flora's fourth ability is Splice. Flora channels, gaining the ability to spawn a single flower of her choosing with a combination of key presses. The combination in question determines the buffs that the plant will provide. This is basically the plant version of Guitar Hero. Is there anything wrong with that? Certainly not, as the buffs provided from the Splice are nothing to scoff at. Added toxin damage with fire rate, reload, movement, and attack speed, damage reduction and health regeneration, melee damage and lifesteal, and power strength combined with range. The buffs as they are sound great, but Splice is not specified if its effects are like Gardens or not. In other words, Splice's effectiveness depends on if it forces allies to camp within its area of effect for the buffs, or if they can simply walk in and walk out to receive the buff, similar to Chroma's everlasting ward augment. Anyways, here are Flora's scores. A pure buff frame is something that we have not really received since Harrow, but even then, Flora manages to pull the idea off rather well. Some parts of her kit are absolutely insane, but otherwise she sounds fantastic. For my personal thoughts, I do believe that Flora's kit, or at least parts of it, are horrendously overpowered, namely her third ability with its current duration freezing capabilities and her first ability to a smaller extent due to being able to do so much just as a first ability. With some changes, Flora could be a hell of a lot more balanced as a concept, and a hell of a lot more fun to potentially play. Thank you for watching.